Before we get into the story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom sparkled like a jewelry box tipped over by careless hands. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto marble floors, so polished they reflected the legs of champagne flutes and the sequined hems of designer gowns. A live jazz quartet played something sultry and low in the corner, their melody weaving through conversations about stock portfolios and summer homes in the Hamptons. It was the kind of party where everyone pretended not to notice the price tags still metaphorically attached to everything, including the people. Sophia Mitchell stood near the dessert table, feeling every inch the imposter she was. Her dress was borrowed from her roommate, a sleek black number that fit well enough but didn't quite hang on her, the way expensive clothing seemed to cling to the women around her. The invitation to this charity gala had come from her boss at the magazine, where she worked as a junior writer, a last-minute replacement after the senior editor caught the flu. Cover it for the lifestyle section, her boss had said. Network a little. Try not to spill anything on yourself. Sophia adjusted the thin strap on her shoulder and took a sip of champagne that tasted like it cost more than her monthly Metro pass. She had already interviewed the event coordinator and snapped a few photos on her phone. Her real job here was done. What remained was 3 more hours of feeling awkward and out of place. She glanced across the room, and her eyes landed on him. Tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back in a way that suggested either natural perfection or an expensive stylist. He wore a black suit that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body, the kind of tailoring that whispered wealth without shouting it. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass, and his eyes, even from this distance, held a cool, assessing quality. But what really caught Sophia's attention was the way he stood, slightly apart from the crowd, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of amber liquid he didn't seem interested in drinking. He looked bored, detached, like he was counting the minutes until he could leave. And then it clicked in Sophia's mind, a terrible, mortifying misunderstanding that would change everything. She had overheard 2 women whispering near the coat check earlier. Did you see the escorts they hired for tonight? Apparently some of the single women requested them. Very discreet, very professional. Just arm candy to avoid awkward questions. Sophia looked at the man again, the slightly distant expression, the perfect appearance, the way he seemed to be waiting for someone. Oh God, she thought. He's one of them. Her heart began to race, not with attraction, though he was certainly attractive, but with a wild, desperate idea. Her ex-boyfriend, Derek, was at this party. She had seen him 20 minutes ago, draped over some blonde in a dress that probably cost more than Sophia's car. Derek, who had dumped her 6 months ago because he said she wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't polished enough, wasn't enough, period. The idea formed quickly, recklessly. If she showed up with someone like that on her arm, Derek would see, everyone would see. She wouldn't be the girl who didn't belong. She would be the girl who belonged, with someone who looked like that. Before her rational mind could intervene, Sophia's feet were moving. She crossed the ballroom with her chin up, champagne glass gripped a little too tightly, her borrowed heels clicking against the marble with more confidence than she felt. The man didn't notice her approach at first. He was staring out one of the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city skyline, his profile stark and beautiful against the glittering lights beyond. When Sophia stopped in front of him, he turned slowly, one dark eyebrow lifting in mild surprise. Up close, he was even more devastating. His eyes were a shade of gray that reminded her of storm clouds, and there was a faint scar above his left eyebrow that somehow made him more attractive instead of less. "Hello," Sophia said, her voice steadier than she expected. The man blinked. "Hello." His voice was deep, smooth, with the kind of natural authority that made her spine straighten instinctively. Sophia swallowed. This was insane. This was the most insane thing she had ever done. But Derek was across the room, probably watching, and pride was a hell of a drug. "I need your help," she said quickly, before she could lose her nerve. The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or curiosity. With what exactly? Sophia took a breath. "I need you to pretend to be my date for the rest of this party. Just a few hours. I'll pay you whatever your rate is, obviously. I just need," she hesitated, hating how desperate she sounded. "I need people to think I'm with someone like you." The man went very still, his gray eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Someone like me," he repeated slowly. "You know," Sophia gestured vaguely at him, taking in the perfect suit, the perfect face, the perfect everything. "Someone who looks like they belong here." The corner of his mouth twitched. It might have been the start of a smile, or it might have been something else entirely. "And you think I don't belong here?" Sophia blinked, confused. "What?" "No, I mean, you do belong here. That's the point. She floundered. "You're clearly very good at this." "At what?" "At being." Sophia lowered her voice. "An escort." The word hung in the air between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. For a long moment, the man said nothing. He simply stared at her, his expression unreadable, though something dangerous seemed to simmer beneath the surface. Then, slowly, deliberately, he set his glass down on a nearby table. His movements were controlled, precise, and Sophia suddenly had the unsettling feeling that she had made a tremendous mistake. "You think," he said, his voice very quiet, very calm, "that I'm an escort?" It wasn't a question. Sophia's confidence wavered. "Aren't you?" Another beat of silence. Then, impossibly, the man laughed. It was a low, rough sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. He shook his head, and when he looked at her again, there was something bright and sharp in his eyes that made her pulse kick up for an entirely different reason. "No," he said. "I'm not an escort." Sophia felt her face flood with heat. "Oh, God." "Oh, no. I'm so sorry. I heard someone say, and you were standing alone, and I thought." She was babbling now, desperate to disappear into the floor. "I'm so sorry. Please forget I said anything." She turned to leave, but his hand shot out, catching her wrist gently. His touch was warm, his fingers firm but not forceful. "Wait," he said. Sophia froze, her heart hammering. She looked up at him, expecting anger or disgust. Instead, she found something that looked almost like intrigue. His gray eyes studied her face with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. Then, unexpectedly, his mouth curved into a slow, deliberate smile. It transformed his entire face, softening the sharp edges and revealing a hint of mischief that Sophia hadn't seen before. "I'll do it," he said. Sophia blinked. "What?" "I'll pretend to be your date, just for tonight." His thumb brushed absently against the inside of her wrist, and she wondered if he could feel her pulse racing. "Why?" The word came out breathless, confused. He shrugged, but there was nothing casual about the way he was looking at her. "Let's call it curiosity." Besides, his smile widened slightly. "This is the most interesting conversation I've had all night." Sophia stared at him, half convinced this was some kind of elaborate joke. "You're serious?" "Completely. But I have one condition." Sophia's breath caught. "What?" "You have to tell me why you need a fake date so badly that you'd proposition a complete stranger." "Fair enough," Sophia said, though her cheeks were still burning. "See that man over there? The one with the blonde?" She nodded toward Derek, who was laughing too loudly at something his date said. The stranger followed her gaze, his expression cooling slightly. Let me guess. Ex-boyfriend? Sophia nodded. He dumped me 6 months ago. Said I wasn't sophisticated enough for his lifestyle. Now he's here with her, and She trailed off, feeling foolish. You wanted to show him what he's missing. The stranger's voice was neutral, but something in his tone made her look up. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Sophia laughed, a hollow sound. Pathetic, right? The stranger's hand was still wrapped loosely around her wrist. He tugged her slightly closer, his voice dropping to something that felt almost intimate. Not pathetic. Human. We all want to be seen as valuable, especially by people who made us feel worthless. Sophia's throat tightened unexpectedly. Who are you? He hesitated for just a fraction of a second, then smiled that dangerous smile again. For tonight? I'm whoever you need me to be. And with that, he laced his fingers through hers and led her onto the dance floor. The quartet had shifted to something slower, more romantic. Couples swayed beneath the chandeliers, their movements languid and practiced. Sophia felt her stranger's arm slide around her waist, pulling her close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her head swim. You didn't tell me your name, she said as they began to move. His hand was warm against the small of her back, guiding her with effortless confidence. You didn't ask. I'm asking now. He seemed to consider this, his gray eyes searching hers. Call me James. Sophia, she offered. I know. Her eyes widened. How? He nodded toward the press badge she'd tucked into her small clutch, the corner just visible. Sophia Mitchell, junior writer, Metropolitan Lifestyle magazine. You're observant. Part of my job. And what job is that if you're not an escort? James's smile turned mysterious. Something far less interesting. Trust me. They turned slowly, and Sophia caught sight of Derek staring at them from across the room. His expression was somewhere between shock and something that might have been jealousy. A fierce satisfaction bloomed in her chest. He sees us, she whispered. Good, James said, then did something unexpected. He leaned down, his lips brushing against her ear. Then let's give him something to really see. Before Sophia could ask what he meant, James spun her out and then back into his arms, with a practiced grace that made her breath catch. His hand slid from her waist to the curve of her hip, possessive and confident. To anyone watching, they looked like lovers, like two people who couldn't keep their hands off each other. Sophia's heart was pounding for reasons that had nothing to do with Derek anymore. You're good at this, she managed. At what? At pretending. James's eyes darkened slightly, his voice dropping to a murmur only she could hear. Who says I'm pretending? The word sent a shiver down her spine. Sophia tried to laugh it off, to remind herself this was an act, but her body wasn't listening. She was hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. The warmth of his palm against her back. The way his thumb traced small circles against her hip. The solid strength of his chest beneath her hand. The song ended, but James didn't let her go. Instead, he kept her close as they moved off the dance floor, his hand never leaving her waist. Thirsty? He asked. Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. James guided her toward the bar, his presence commanding enough that people seemed to part around them instinctively. He ordered 2 glasses of champagne, then handed her one with a slight smile. To successful deceptions, he said, raising his glass. Sophia clinked hers against his, her eyes searching his face. This doesn't feel like a deception. James's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across his features before he locked it down. No, he agreed quietly. It doesn't. They stood there for a moment, the party swirling around them, neither quite sure what to say next. Then Derek's voice cut through the moment like a knife. Sophia. She turned to find her ex standing behind her, his date conspicuously absent. Derek's eyes moved between her and James, his jaw tight. "Derek," Sophia said, proud of how level her voice sounded. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight," Derek said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Small world," Sophia replied. Derek's gaze fixed on James, something aggressive in his posture. "And you are?" James extended his hand, his smile polite but cold. A friend of Sophia's. Derek shook it reluctantly, and Sophia didn't miss the way he winced slightly at James's grip. "Funny," Derek said. "I don't remember Sophia mentioning any friends who look like they stepped out of a cologne commercial." James's smile sharpened. "Funnier still, I don't remember asking for your opinion." The temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Derek's face flushed, his eyes narrowing. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but Sophia and I have history. I'm just looking out for her." James's hand found Sophia's waist again, a claiming gesture that made Derek's expression darken further. "I appreciate your concern," James said, his voice deadly quiet. "But Sophia doesn't need you to look out for her. She never did." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked at Sophia, something almost pleading in his eyes. "Soph, come on. This guy? Really?" Sophia felt James tense beside her, his hand tightening fractionally on her waist. But before he could respond, Sophia stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "Yes, Derek. Really. This guy who in the last hour has shown me more respect and attention than you did in 2 years. This guy who doesn't make me feel like I need to apologize for existing. So yes, really." Derek's face went from red to nearly purple. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Finally, he spat out, "You'll regret this," then turned on his heel and stalked away, nearly colliding with a waiter carrying a tray of canapes. The moment he was gone, Sophia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking. "That was," she started, then laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "Oh my God, I can't believe I just did that." James turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders, his expression serious. "You were magnificent." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes suddenly burning with unexpected tears. "I've wanted to say that to him for 6 months. You gave me the courage to do it. Thank you." Something shifted in James's face. His hand slid from her shoulders down her arms, his touch gentle. "Sophia, he hesitated, seeming to struggle with something. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and his expression shuddered. "I'm sorry," he said. "I have to take this. It's important." He stepped away before she could respond, moving toward the balcony doors with the phone pressed to his ear. Sophia watched him go, feeling suddenly bereft. The party continued around her, but she felt separate from it now, like she'd stepped out of a bubble and couldn't quite figure out how to get back in. A woman appeared at her elbow, older, elegant, with silver hair twisted into an elaborate updo. "Excuse me, dear," the woman said, her voice cultured and curious. "That man you were dancing with, do you know who he is?" Sophia blinked. He said his name was James. Why? The woman's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose. James. How charmingly modest. She leaned in conspiratorially. "That's James Ashford, as in Ashford Technologies, as in the billionaire who just bought out half of Silicon Valley." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Sophia grabbed the edge of the bar to steady herself. "What?" "Oh yes," the woman continued, oblivious to Sophia's shock. "Quite the eligible bachelor, though he's notoriously private. Hates these events, from what I understand. His sister usually drags him to them. Apparently, she's on the charity board." Sophia couldn't breathe. Billionaire. He was a billionaire. And she had asked him, oh God, she had asked him if he was an escort. She had offered to pay him. Heat flooded her face, then drained away, leaving her cold and shaking. The woman was still talking. Something about Ashford Technology's latest acquisition, but Sophia wasn't listening. She needed to leave. Right now. Before James. No. Before James. Ashford came back, and she had to face the full weight of her humiliation. She set her champagne glass down with a clatter and headed for the exit, her borrowed heels clicking frantically against the marble. She made it to the coat check, fumbling for her ticket, when a hand caught her arm. Leaving without saying goodbye? James's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it. Sophia couldn't look at him. Let me go. Not until you tell me what's wrong. 1 minute we're fine, and the next you're running away. What happened? Sophia finally turned, and the anger in her expression made him drop his hand. I know who you are. His face went carefully blank. Ah, Sophia repeated, her voice rising. That's all you have to say? Ah, you let me stand there and humiliate myself. You let me think you were, she couldn't even say it. And all along you were, what, slumming it? Finding out how the other half lives? James's jaw tightened. That's not fair. Not fair. You lied to me. I never lied, James said, his voice hard. You made an assumption. I simply didn't correct it. Sophia laughed bitterly. Oh, that's so much better. Very ethical. I was trying to have one night where people didn't look at me like a bank account with legs, James snapped, the careful control slipping. One night, where someone talked to me like I was a person instead of an investment opportunity. Is that really so terrible? Sophia shook her head, tears threatening again. You don't understand. What don't I understand? That I'm not like you, Sophia said, the words coming out harsh and pained. I'm not rich. I'm not sophisticated. I'm exactly what my ex said I was, someone who doesn't belong in this world. And you, she gestured at him, you're so far above me that tonight was probably just a funny story you'll tell at your next board meeting. The poor journalist who thought you were a prostitute. James's eyes flashed with something dangerous. Is that really what you think of me? I don't know what to think of you, Sophia said quietly. I don't know you at all. That's not true. Yes, it is. You lied about who you were. I didn't lie, James repeated, his voice rough. I told you to call me James. That's my name. I told you I found you interesting. That's true. I held you while we danced, and it felt more real than anything I've experienced in years. Also true. Sophia's breath hitched. Don't. Don't what? Don't try to make this into something it's not. We both know this was just a game to you. James stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. A game? You think this is a game? Sophia held her ground, even though every instinct told her to run. What else would you call it? James's hand came up, his fingers brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. I'd call it the first honest conversation I've had in months. I'd call it the first time someone looked at me and saw a person instead of a dollar sign. I'd call it, he paused, his thumb tracing her jawline, the best mistake you ever made. Sophia's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. This is crazy. Probably, James agreed. His face was so close now she could feel his breath against her lips. But I haven't felt this alive in years, and I'm not ready to let it go yet. Are you? The question hung between them, weighted with possibility and danger in equal measure. Sophia knew she should say yes, should walk away from this impossibly beautiful, impossibly complicated man and go back to her safe, small life. But instead, she found herself whispering, "No." James's eyes darkened, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was nothing like Sophia had imagined. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was fierce, consuming, like he was trying to prove something to both of them. His hands cupped her face, tilting her head to deepen the kiss, and Sophia's fingers fisted in his jacket, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. "Come home with me," he murmured. Sophia's eyes flew open. "What?" "Not like that," he clarified quickly, though his voice was rough with want. I don't want this night to end. Let me make you dinner. Let me show you that I'm not the villain you think I am." Sophia pulled back slightly, her rational mind trying desperately to reassert control. "This is insane. I don't even know you." "Then get to know me," James said simply. "No pretense, no games, just you and me." Sophia looked at him, really looked at him. The careful way he was holding himself, like he was afraid she'd bolt if he moved too quickly. The vulnerability in his eyes that he was trying so hard to hide. The way his thumb was unconsciously stroking her cheek, like he couldn't quite make himself stop touching her. Against every ounce of common sense she possessed, Sophia nodded. His smile was like sunrise. His car was waiting outside, a sleek black vehicle that probably cost more than Sophia's annual salary. The driver opened the door without comment, his expression carefully neutral, even though his boss had just appeared with a strange woman he clearly hadn't arrived with. The ride to James's penthouse was quiet. He kept her hand clasped in his thumb tracing patterns against her palm. Sophia stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past, and tried to process what was happening. She'd come to the party alone, invisible. Now she was in a billionaire's car, heading to his home, after kissing him in a coat check like a teenager. Her life had officially become unrecognizable. The penthouse was everything Sophia expected, and nothing she was prepared for. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and white. Original artwork on the walls. Everything was perfect, pristine, and utterly impersonal. "It looks like a magazine spread," Sophia said before she could stop herself. James shrugged out of his jacket, draping it over a chair. "That's because a magazine decorated it. I bought this place 3 years ago and hired someone to make it look like a home. Doesn't quite work, does it?" Sophia turned to look at him. "Where do you actually live?" "Here," James said, but there was something hollow in his voice. "Technically. But it doesn't feel like home. It feels like a very expensive hotel room. Why don't you change it?" He was quiet for a long moment, loosening his tie with fingers that weren't quite steady. "Because that would require knowing what I actually want. And I've spent so long being what everyone else needs me to be that I'm not sure I remember." The raw honesty in his voice made Sophia's chest ache. She crossed to him, stopping just close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Who do they need you to be?" James's laugh was bitter, strong, unshakable, brilliant. The genius who turned his father's company into an empire. The man with the Midas touch who never makes mistakes, never shows weakness, never admits that sometimes the weight of it all makes him want to walk away and never look back. Sophia reached up, her hand settling over his heart. She could feel it beating, fast and hard. "And who do you want to be?" His hand covered hers, pressing it more firmly against his chest. "Right now, just a man who met an interesting woman at a party and wants to know everything about her." Sophia smiled despite herself. "Everything? That could take a while." "We have time," James said softly. The way he was looking at her made Sophia's breath catch, like she was the only real thing in his perfectly curated, perfectly empty penthouse. Like she mattered. "I should tell you about myself," Sophia said. "The boring, non-billionaire version." "I want to hear it," James said. He led her to the massive sectional sofa, then surprised her by heading to the kitchen. "You said something about dinner," she called after him. "I did. Can you cook?" James's voice floated back, tinged with amusement. I can order takeout like a champion." Sophia laughed, some of the tension easing from her shoulders. She curled up on the sofa, tucking her feet beneath her. Around her, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. It was surreal, sitting here in this space that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime, waiting for a man she'd mistaken for an escort to order Chinese food. James returned with his phone, sitting close enough that their knees touched. "Thai or Italian?" "Thai," Sophia said. His eyebrows rose. "Good choice. My favorite, too." As he placed the order, Sophia studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the slight wave in his dark hair that suggested it would curl if left to its own devices, the faint tension around his eyes that spoke of too many late nights and too much responsibility. When he hung up, she said, "Tell me something true." "About you," she clarified, "something you don't tell people at parties." James was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'm lonely." The words were simple, stark. Sophia felt them land in her chest like stones. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes," James continued, his voice low. "I have houses on 3 continents. I have employees who depend on me, investors who trust me, competitors who fear me. But I don't have anyone who sees me. Just me. Not the empire or the bank account or the potential merger opportunity. Just," he paused. "James." Sophia's throat tightened. "I see you." His gray eyes met hers, searching. "Do you?" "I see a man who was kind to a stranger, even when she insulted him," Sophia said softly. "I see someone who danced with me like it mattered. I see someone who's tired of pretending." James reached out, his fingers tangling with hers. "Your turn. Tell me something true." Sophia took a breath. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "That I'm always going to be the person who doesn't quite fit. That my ex was right and I'm just—" She struggled for the words. "Not enough. Not smart enough. Not ambitious enough. Not polished enough. That I'll spend my whole life watching other people live the lives I write about in magazines." James's hand tightened on hers. "You're wrong." Sophia laughed shakily. "You don't know that." "Yes," James said fiercely, "I do. Because in one night, you've been braver than most people are in a lifetime. You walked up to a stranger and asked for help. You stood up to your ex. You called me out when you thought I'd lied to you. That's not someone who isn't enough. That's someone who's extraordinary." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. She blinked them away, but James saw. His thumb brushed beneath her eye, catching the moisture there. "Hey," he murmured. "I'm sorry. It's stupid." "It's not." He pulled her closer until she was tucked against his side. His arm came around her shoulders, solid and warm. "Talk to me." So she did. Sophia told him about growing up in a small town with big dreams, about working 3 jobs to put herself through journalism school, about the ex-boyfriend who had slowly, methodically convinced her that wanting more was selfish, that being ambitious was unattractive, that she should be grateful for whatever scraps of affection he deigned to offer. "I believed him," Sophia said quietly. "For so long, I believed him. And even now, even after he's gone, that voice is still in my head telling me I'm not good enough." James was quiet, his hand stroking slow patterns on her shoulder. Then he said, "I had a brother." Sophia looked up at him, surprised. "Had?" "He died 3 years ago. Car accident. He was driving home from one of my company events, exhausted, because I'd kept him there until 2 in the morning going over contracts. If he'd left earlier, if I hadn't been so demanding, he'd still be alive." "Oh, James," Sophia breathed. "It wasn't your fault." James's smile was bitter. "Everyone says that. But I know the truth. I sacrificed him on the altar of success, just like I've sacrificed everything else. My relationships, my health, any chance at a normal life. And for what? Money I don't need? Power I don't want? An empire built on the backs of people I barely see as human anymore? The pain in his voice was visceral. Sophia turned, kneeling on the sofa so she could face him fully. Is that why you were at the party alone tonight? He nodded. My sister, Emma, she's on the charity board. She keeps trying to drag me back into the world. Keeps insisting I need to live instead of just existing. But I don't know how anymore. Everyone at those events wants something from me. Everyone has an angle, a pitch, a deal they're trying to close. No one just wants James. Until you, Sophia said softly. Until me, he agreed. His hand came up, cupping her face. You looked at me and saw an escort. It was the most refreshing thing that's happened to me in years. Sophia laughed despite herself. I'm never going to live that down, am I? Never, James confirmed. But he was smiling now, a real smile that reached his eyes. The doorbell rang, announcing the food's arrival. James answered it, tipping the delivery person generously before bringing the bags to the coffee table. They ate straight from the containers, sitting on the floor like college students, and talked. About everything and nothing. About Sophia's dreams of being a serious journalist instead of just covering society events. About James's secret love of old movies and his inability to resist rescuing stray cats, which he promptly donated to animal shelters because his lifestyle couldn't accommodate pets. You rescue cats? Sophia asked, delighted. James had the grace to look embarrassed. I have a reputation to maintain. Can't have anyone knowing I'm soft. I think it's too late for that, Sophia teased. You've already shown me you're human. Terrible mistake, James deadpanned. Now I'll have to have you sign an NDA. Sophia threw a spring roll at him. He caught it, took a bite, and grinned. They finished eating, and James cleared the containers away. When he returned, Sophia was standing at the windows, looking out at the city. The lights seemed to go on forever, a galaxy of human ambition and loneliness. James came up behind her, close but not touching. What are you thinking? Sophia leaned back slightly, letting herself rest against his chest. His arms came around her waist, holding her gently. I'm thinking this doesn't feel real. It feels like a dream I'm going to wake up from. What if that's okay? James murmured against her hair. What if we just let it be what it is for tonight and worry about reality tomorrow? Sophia turned in his arms, looking up at him. And what is it? His eyes were dark, intense. I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out. He kissed her again, slower this time, but no less consuming. Sophia's hand slid up his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath her palms. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Just for tonight. Stay with me. Sophia knew she should say no, should protect her heart, which was already dangerously close to forgetting this was temporary. But looking into his eyes, seeing the hope and fear and want reflected there, she couldn't. Okay, she whispered back. James exhaled like she'd given him something precious. He took her hand, leading her through the penthouse. At the entrance to what was clearly the master bedroom, he paused. I meant just stay. Sleep here. I'll take the guest room. You don't have to, Sophia started. I want to, James interrupted. I want to do this right. Whatever this is. Sophia's heart squeezed. She reached up, pulling his face down to hers for another kiss. This one was soft, sweet, a promise of something neither of them could quite name yet. When she pulled back, she smiled. Then stay with me. Both of us. Just sleep. James searched her face, then nodded. He found her something to wear, an old college t-shirt that swallowed her frame and made him smile. She disappeared into the bathroom to change, taking a moment to stare at her reflection. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was coming loose from its pins, and her eyes were bright with an emotion she was afraid to name. "What are you doing, Sophie?" she asked her reflection. But her reflection had no answers. When she emerged, James had changed too, trading his suit for simple sleep pants and a t-shirt. He looked younger like this, less intimidating, more real. They climbed into his massive bed, and after a moment's hesitation, James pulled her close. Sophia's head found his shoulder, her hand splaying across his chest. "This is crazy," she murmured. "Completely," James agreed. His fingers traced patterns on her back, soothing and hypnotic. But sometimes, crazy is good. Sophia woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and a warm presence at her back. For a moment, she was disoriented. Then memory came flooding back. The party. The mistake. James. She turned carefully, not wanting to wake him, but his eyes were already open. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," Sophia replied. "This is awkward, isn't it?" "A little," James admitted. "But not bad. Awkward. Just new awkward." Sophia smiled despite herself. "What happens now?" James's hand found hers beneath the covers. "I was hoping you'd have breakfast with me. Real breakfast, not Thai food leftovers. And then, maybe," he hesitated, "maybe we could figure this out." "This?" Sophia asked softly. "Us," James clarified. "If there's going to be an us. I'd like there to be. But I understand if last night was just a moment. If you want to go back to your life and forget about the weird billionaire who can't cook." Sophia's heart clenched. "What if I don't want to forget?" "Then don't," James said simply. His gray eyes searched hers. "I know this is fast. I know it's complicated. But Sophia, I haven't felt like this in..." He paused. "I'm not sure I've ever felt like this." "Like what?" "Like myself. Like I can breathe. Like there's something in my life worth getting out of bed for besides obligations and expectations." Sophia leaned in, kissing him softly. "Then let's have breakfast." James's smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds. They made breakfast together. Or rather, Sophia made breakfast, while James provided enthusiastic but largely unhelpful commentary. He kept finding excuses to touch her, his hand on her waist as he reached past her for a pan, his fingers brushing hers as she handed him a spatula. It felt domestic, comfortable, right in a way that should have terrified her, but somehow didn't. They were halfway through eggs and toast when James's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. "I have to take this. It's my sister." Sophia nodded, and James stepped away, his voice dropping to a murmur she couldn't quite hear. But she could see his face through the doorway, watch the way his expression shifted from relaxed to tense, to something that looked almost like panic. When he returned, the easy warmth from earlier was gone. "What's wrong?" Sophia asked. James ran a hand through his hair. "That was Emma. She saw us at the party last night. Apparently, it's already in the society pages. Woman mysteriously appears with reclusive billionaire James Ashford. Speculation runs wild." Sophia's stomach dropped. "Oh, God." "It's fine," James said quickly. "Or it will be. Emma just wanted to warn me that the press might be sniffing around. She also," he paused, "wanted to know who you are and if I've lost my mind." "Have you?" "Lost your mind?" James looked at her, and something fierce and tender crossed his face. "Probably. But I don't want to find it again." The words should have reassured her, but Sophia couldn't shake the growing sense of unease. This was real now, not just a moment at a party or a night in a beautiful penthouse. This was her face in newspapers, speculation about who she was and what she wanted from James Ashford. "I should go," Sophia said abruptly. What? Why? Because this is your life, James. Photographers and society pages, and people analyzing every move you make. I'm not built for that. She gestured helplessly at herself. Me. And I'm just me, James said, crossing to her. Sophia, I don't care about the press. I don't care what people think. I care about you. You barely know me, Sophia protested. Then let me get to know you, James said. Please. Give us, a real chance. Not just one night. A real chance. Sophia wanted to. God, she wanted to so badly it hurt. But fear was climbing up her throat, whispering all the ways this could go wrong. What if your world chews me up and spits me out? What if people think I'm a gold digger or a social climber? What if I can't handle it and I disappoint you? Then we'll figure it out together, James said firmly. But Sophia, don't let fear make this decision. Don't let the bastard in your head that sounds like your ex win. His words hit her like cold water. He was right. This was Derek's voice, telling her she wasn't good enough, wasn't strong enough, wasn't enough, period. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? Okay, Sophia repeated. Stronger now. Let's try. Let's really try. James's entire face transformed. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. I promise I'll make this worth it. Over the next few weeks, Sophia learned what it meant to date a billionaire. There were photographers camped outside her apartment. There were articles dissecting her background, her job, her clothes, her presumed motivations. There were people online who called her a nobody, a gold digger, a social climber using James for his money. It was brutal and invasive, and exactly as bad as she'd feared. But there was also James. James, who showed up at her door with coffee when she'd had a bad day. James, who read her articles and gave thoughtful feedback. James, who held her hand in public despite the cameras and kissed her forehead and told her she was brave. James, who slowly, carefully, opened up about his own fears and insecurities. They were having dinner at a quiet restaurant, tucked into a corner booth away from prying eyes, when James said, I need to tell you something. Sophia's heart stuttered. That sounds ominous. It's about the night we met, James said, when you asked me to pretend to be your date. Yes? I'd been planning to leave, James admitted. The party, the company, all of it. I was going to sell everything and disappear. Just walk away from the life everyone expected me to live. Sophia set down her fork. What stopped you? You, James said simply. You walked up to me and asked for help, and for the first time in months, I felt useful. Not as a bank account or a business asset, just as a person who could do something kind for someone else. I didn't save you that night, Sophia. You saved me. Sophia's eyes burned. James, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep doing it, James said. His hand found hers across the table. Keep reminding me that there's more to life than board meetings and stock prices. Keep showing me what it means to actually live. I think we're doing that for each other, Sophia said softly. His smile was heartbreaking in its vulnerability. Yeah, we are. They finished dinner and walked along the waterfront. It was late enough that most of the tourists had gone home, leaving the path relatively empty. James had his arm around Sophia's shoulders, and she was tucked against his side. And for the first time in weeks, no one was photographing them or shouting questions. This is nice, Sophia said. Just being, James agreed. He stopped, turning her to face him. The city lights reflected in his gray eyes. Sophia, I know this hasn't been easy. I know my world is complicated and intrusive. If you want out, if it's too much, I'll understand. Do you want me to want out? Sophia asked quietly. God, no, James said fervently. I'm terrified every day that you're going to wake up and realize this isn't worth it. That I'm not worth it. Then stop worrying, Sophia said. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. Yes, your world is complicated. Yes, it's been hard. But James, you're worth it. You're worth every article and every photograph and every person who thinks they know what this is, because they don't. Only we do. James kissed her, deep and desperate and full of relief. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, precious and terrifying. Sophia's heart felt too big for her chest. Good, she whispered, because I'm falling in love with you too. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, while the city moved around them. Then James's phone rang. He groaned. I'm sorry, I have to check. It might be Emma. Sophia nodded, stepping back to give him privacy. But as James answered, his face went pale. What? When? He was already moving, pulling Sophia along. I'm on my way. In the car, James was tense and silent. Sophia didn't push, just held his hand and waited. Finally, he said, that was my head of security. Someone leaked a rumor that we're engaged, not just tabloid speculation, an actual fabricated announcement with fake quotes from both of us. It's everywhere. Sophia felt cold. Why would someone do that? James's jaw was tight. To force my hand. If I deny it, the story becomes, why won't James Ashford commit? If I don't deny it, I'm trapped in a lie. Either way, it's a power play. But who would? Sophia started. Derek, James said flatly. Your ex. The security team traced the leak to him. Apparently, he's been feeding stories to the tabloids about you for weeks, trying to control the narrative. Make you look like a social climber, so when the relationship falls apart, he can swoop back in as the I told you so. Sophia felt sick. He's that vindictive? James glanced at her, his eyes dark. He's that scared. Scared you moved on. Scared you're happier without him. Scared that you've proven everything he said about you was a lie. They pulled up to James's building. Upstairs, his team was already assembled in his home office. Lawyers, publicists, security consultants. They all looked grim. The situation was worse than Sophia had imagined. Derek hadn't just leaked the engagement rumor. He'd fabricated text messages, suggesting Sophia had been planning to trap James from the beginning. He'd found old college friends willing to say she'd always been a gold digger. He'd built an entire narrative designed to destroy her credibility and James's reputation. We need to issue a statement, one of the lawyers said. Deny everything, paint her as the villain, and move on. Clean break. No, James said flatly. Everyone turned to look at him. No, he repeated. We're not throwing Sophia under the bus to save my reputation. Then what do you suggest? The publicist asked. We tell the truth, James said. He looked at Sophia. All of it. How we met. Why we were together that first night, everything. The room erupted in protests. That will make you both look ridiculous, someone said. It will undermine your authority, said another. It will feed the narrative that she's unsophisticated and you're impulsive, added a third. James held up a hand, silencing them all. Or it will show that we're human. That we met in an unconventional way and chose each other anyway. That the world can think what it wants. But this is real. He turned to Sophia. If you're okay with that, if you're willing to let me tell everyone that you mistook me for an escort, and I fell for you anyway. Sophia looked at him, this man who was willing to make himself vulnerable, to risk his carefully constructed image, to protect her. Then she looked at the assembled team, at their expensive suits and their calculating expressions, and their certainty that she wasn't worth the trouble. She thought about Derek, about all the times he'd made her feel small and unworthy, about all the voices in her head that told her she didn't deserve this, didn't deserve James, didn't deserve to be happy. And she thought about what James had said. Don't let fear make this decision. Yes, Sophia said clearly. Let's tell the truth. The publicist looked like she might faint. The lawyers started arguing, but James was smiling, that real smile that transformed his whole face, the one Sophia had come to treasure. They worked through the night, crafting a statement that was honest without being naive, vulnerable without being weak. By dawn, they had something that felt right. James Ashford met Sophia Mitchell at a charity gala under unusual circumstances. Their relationship began unconventionally and has continued in the face of intense scrutiny. While recent rumors of an engagement are premature, they are committed to exploring their connection privately. They ask for respect and privacy as they navigate this together. It wasn't flowery or defensive. It didn't throw anyone under the bus or make excuses. It was simply true. When they released it, the internet exploded. Half the comments were supportive, praising their honesty and calling them relationship goals. Half were critical, mocking them for airing their personal lives or questioning Sophia's motives. But slowly, a shift happened. Other people started sharing their own unconventional meeting stories. The narrative changed from judgment to curiosity to, eventually, acceptance. Derek, unsurprisingly, didn't take it well. He tried to double down, giving interviews claiming Sophia had always been manipulative. But the more he talked, the more desperate he seemed. Eventually, his own friends started distancing themselves, unwilling to be associated with his increasingly unhinged behavior. Sophia barely noticed. She was too busy living her life. She got promoted at work, her honest coverage of the charity gala and the aftermath earning her recognition. She moved out of her tiny apartment and into a place that felt like home, not because it was expensive, but because it was hers. And she fell deeper in love with James. They had their first real fight 3 months in. It was about something stupid. Sophia couldn't even remember what later. But it escalated quickly. Voices were raised. Doors were slammed. Sophia ended up crying in the bathroom while James paced the living room like a caged animal. But unlike with Derek, who would have let the fight fester and used it as ammunition for days, James knocked on the bathroom door within an hour. "I'm sorry," he said through the wood. "I'm an idiot. And I'm falling apart without you on the other side of this door. Please come out so we can fix this." Sophia opened the door, her eyes red and puffy. "I'm sorry, too." They held each other for a long time, neither quite sure who was supporting whom. Then James said, "I'm not good at this, at relationships, at being vulnerable, at letting someone see me at my worst. But I want to be good at it, with you. So teach me. How do we fight without destroying each other?" "We remember that we're on the same team," Sophia said. "We say what we mean instead of what we think will hurt most. We cool down before we talk. We forgive." James kissed her forehead. "Okay, we can do that." And they did. The fights didn't stop entirely because life wasn't a fairy tale, and they were both stubborn, complicated people. But they learned to fight fair, to apologize, to choose each other even when it was hard. 6 months after they met, James took Sophia back to the Grand Meridian Hotel, the same ballroom where she'd mistaken him for an escort, and accidentally changed both their lives. "Why are we here?" Sophia asked as they walked in. James didn't answer, just led her to the middle of the dance floor. The space was empty. No party tonight. Just them and the echoing silence. The lights were dimmed, but James must have arranged for the chandeliers to be on because they sparkled overhead like stars. "Do you remember what I said that night?" James asked. Sophia thought back. "You said a lot of things." I said I hadn't felt alive in years, James reminded her. I said, you made me feel like I could breathe. I said I didn't know who I was anymore because I'd spent so long being what everyone else needed. Sophia nodded, her throat tight. All of that was true, James said. But what I didn't say, what I didn't know yet, was that you weren't just reminding me how to live. You were giving me a reason to. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Sophia's heart stopped. James, she breathed. 6 months ago, you walked up to me and asked me to pretend, James said. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking slightly. You thought I was someone I wasn't, and somehow, that was exactly what I needed. Someone who could see past the empire and the reputation and just see a man. Someone who could be brave enough to ask for help and honest enough to call me out when I was wrong. Someone who could love me, not despite my flaws, but including them. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple and elegant, a single diamond that caught the light from the chandeliers above. I'm not asking you to pretend anymore, James said. I'm asking you to make this real, to build a life with me, arguments and all, to be my partner, my home, my reason to get out of bed in the morning. Sophia Mitchell, will you marry me? Tears were streaming down Sophia's face. She thought about the girl who'd stood in this room 6 months ago, alone and invisible, convinced she wasn't enough. She thought about all the ways James had shown her that was a lie, that she was more than enough, that she was extraordinary. She thought about the life they'd built together, messy and complicated, and absolutely perfect. Yes, Sophia said, her voice breaking. Yes, of course, yes. James slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like salt and joy and promise. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, James said, I have a confession. What? I'm still not good at pretending. This has been real from the moment you walked up to me. I think I fell in love with you when you offered to pay my hourly rate. Sophia burst out laughing. That's the worst meet-cute story in history. I know, James grinned, but it's ours. They danced in the empty ballroom, no music except their own heartbeats, no audience except each other. And Sophia thought about how 6 months ago she'd been terrified of not being enough, of not belonging. Now she understood that belonging wasn't about fitting into someone else's world. It was about finding someone who wanted to build a new world with you. One where mistakes could become miracles, where loneliness could become love, and where two people could see past the pretense to the truth underneath. A truth that was messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. Their wedding was small, intimate, everything the charity gala hadn't been. Just close friends and family in a garden, with Emma as Sophia's maid of honor and James's best friend from college as his best man. Sophia wore a simple white dress. James wore a suit that didn't look like armor, and they wrote their own vows. I promise to always see you, Sophia said. Not the CEO or the empire or the bank account. Just James. Just the man who rescues stray cats and can't cook but tries anyway. The man who holds me when I'm scared and believes in me when I don't believe in myself. The man who taught me that being enough starts with believing I am. I promise to always choose you, James said, his voice thick with emotion. Even when it's hard. Even when the world has opinions. Even when I'm scared of how much I need you. You walked into my life when I was ready to walk away from everything, and you gave me a reason to stay. You gave me hope. You gave me home. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. When they kissed, sealing promises they both intended to keep, everyone cheered. At the reception, Derek tried to crash. Security stopped him at the gate, but Sophia saw him through the fence. For a moment, she felt a flicker of the old fear. Then James's hand found hers. "You okay?" James asked quietly. Sophia looked at her ex-boyfriend, at the bitterness and anger etched into his face, and felt nothing but pity. She turned to her husband, this man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and loved her anyway. "I'm perfect," she said, and she meant it. Derek left eventually, and Sophia didn't give him another thought. The reception continued, full of laughter and love and terrible dancing. James's sister Emma gave a toast that made everyone cry, then laugh when she revealed that she'd been trying to set James up for years, and he'd turned down everyone. Apparently, all it took was someone mistaking him for a prostitute, Emma said, grinning. Who knew that was the key? Sophia's face flamed, but she was laughing too. James pulled her close, whispering in her ear, "Best mistake of my life." "Mine too," Sophia whispered back. They honeymooned in Scotland, in a tiny cottage far from cameras and tabloids and expectations. They hiked through highlands, got caught in rainstorms, and spent long evenings by the fire talking about nothing and everything. One night, curled up together under a heavy quilt, James said, "I want to do something with the company. Something that matters." Sophia turned to look at him. "Like what?" "I want to start a foundation," James said, "for kids from backgrounds like yours. Scholarships, mentorship programs, resources to help them build careers in fields they never thought were accessible. I want to use this absurd amount of money to actually change lives, instead of just accumulating more of it." Sophia's heart swelled. "That's incredible." "But," James smiled at her knowing tone, "but I want you to run it with me. You know what it's like to fight for opportunities, to feel like you don't belong. Your voice, your perspective, that's what will make this real, instead of just another rich person's tax write-off." Sophia thought about her younger self, struggling to afford textbooks and working 3 jobs. Thought about all the kids out there right now who were just as smart, just as driven, but didn't have the resources or connections to make it. "Yes," she said firmly. "Let's do it." They launched the Ashford Opportunity Initiative a year later. It started small, just a handful of scholarships and 1 mentorship program. But word spread quickly. Within 3 years, they were funding hundreds of students annually, providing not just money, but guidance, connections, and the belief that they belonged in rooms they'd been told were closed to them. Sophia threw herself into the work with a passion that sometimes worried James. More than once, he found her asleep at her desk, surrounded by grant applications and program proposals. "Love," James would say gently, shaking her awake. "You're going to burn out." "I can't," Sophia would insist. "There's too much to do, too many kids who need this, and I can't fail them." "You won't," James assured her, "but you also can't help them if you run yourself into the ground. Come to bed. We'll save the world tomorrow." It became their routine, James watching over Sophia, making sure she ate and slept and occasionally took a break. Sophia pushing James to be more than just the cold CEO, to use his influence for good, to remember why they started this in the first place. They balanced each other, challenged each other, grew together. On their 5th anniversary, they stood in the ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel again. But this time, it was filled with scholarship recipients, mentors, and donors. The Ashford Opportunity Initiative's annual gala had become one of the most prestigious charity events in the city. Sophia watched the young people mingling with business leaders and thought about how far they'd all come. James came up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking?" Sophia leaned back against him. "I'm thinking about the girl who walked into this room 5 years ago, the one who thought she had to pretend to be someone else to matter." "And?" James prompted. "And I'm grateful she was brave enough to make that mistake," Sophia said, "because it led to this, to us, to all of them." She nodded toward the scholarship recipients. "To a life I never imagined I deserved, but somehow got anyway. You always deserved it, James said softly. You just needed someone to reflect it back to you until you could see it yourself. Sophia turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had once been a stranger she'd propositioned at a party. The man who had become her husband, her partner, her home. I love you, she said. I love you too, James replied. Always. They danced, just like they had that first night. But everything was different now. No pretense, no fear, just two people who had found each other in the most unlikely way and built something real from a moment of mistaken identity. Later, after the gala ended and the guests had gone home, they stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights sparkled like scattered diamonds, each one a life, a story, a possibility. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't mistaken you for an escort? Sophia asked. All the time, James admitted. I think I would have left that party alone, would have sold the company, would have disappeared, would have never known what I was missing. And now? Now I know exactly what I would have been missing, James said. He pulled her closer. Everything. Sophia rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. They stayed there for a long time, watching the city breathe below them, grateful for the mistake that had changed everything. Because sometimes, the best things in life come from the moments we get wrong, from the chances we take when we're scared, from the people who see past our mistakes to the truth underneath. And sometimes, just sometimes, the person you mistake for someone else turns out to be exactly the person you needed all along. 10 years after that first night, Sophia stood in the same ballroom once again. But this time, she wasn't alone or invisible. She was presenting the Ashford Opportunity Initiative's impact report to a room full of people who once would have intimidated her. The foundation had grown beyond anything she and James had imagined. They'd funded over 5,000 scholarships, placed graduates in top companies across every industry, and created a network of support that extended far beyond money. But more than the numbers, there were the stories. Like Maya, the first recipient, who'd gone from a struggling single-parent household to becoming a doctor who now volunteered at free clinics. Like David, who'd used his scholarship to study engineering and now worked for a nonprofit bringing clean water to developing countries. Like Jasmine, who'd become a teacher and started her own mentorship program in her old neighborhood. These weren't just success stories. They were proof that when you gave people a chance, when you believed in them and provided resources and refused to let them believe they weren't enough, extraordinary things happened. As Sophia finished her presentation, the room erupted in applause. She caught James's eye from the front row. He was looking at her the same way he had that first night, like she was the most interesting person in the room, like she mattered. After the event, they walked home through the city streets, hand in hand. They could have taken the car, but they both preferred this, the quiet intimacy of moving through the world together. I'm proud of you, James said. Of us, Sophia corrected. We built this together. James stopped walking, turning to face her. The streetlight cast shadows across his face, highlighting the lines that 10 years had etched there. They made him more handsome, Sophia thought, more real. Do you remember what you said to me that first night? James asked. Which part? The part where you said you needed people to think you were with someone like me, James said. Someone who belonged. Sophia winced. I was so stupid. No, James said. You were honest. And the truth is, I needed you just as much. I needed someone who could see past the performance to the person underneath. Someone who could call me James instead of Mr. Ashford. Someone who could love me, not for what I could provide, but for who I was. We saved each other, Sophia said softly. We did, James agreed. And we're still doing it. Every day. They continued walking, passing the places that had become landmarks in their story, The restaurant where they'd had their first real date. The park where James had first told her he loved her. The bookstore where they'd spent a rainy Sunday afternoon arguing about whether happy endings were realistic. "Look at us," Sophia said, gesturing at their surroundings. "We got our happy ending." James squeezed her hand. "This isn't an ending. It's just a chapter. There's still so much ahead. More kids to help, more impact to make, more life to live together." Sophia smiled. Always the optimist. "Only since I met you," James said. "Before that, I was a cynic who thought happiness was a myth sold to people who didn't know better. And now? Now I know happiness is real. It's just not what I thought it would be. It's not a destination or a state of permanent bliss. It's a choice. It's choosing to build something meaningful with someone you love. It's choosing to get up every day and try to be better, do better. It's choosing each other, even when it's hard." They reached their brownstone, the home they'd bought 3 years ago when the penthouse started feeling too much like a museum. This place was lived in, comfortable, full of books and photos and memories. Inside, they kicked off their shoes and collapsed onto the couch. Sophia curled up against James, his arm coming around her automatically. The TV flickered on, some late-night show neither was really watching. "Do you ever regret it?" Sophia asked suddenly. James looked down at her. "Regret what?" "All of it. The scrutiny, the challenges, the way our entire relationship has been lived under a microscope. How I pulled you into my chaos that first night." James was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That first night, when you walked up to me, I was planning my exit strategy. Not just from the party, from everything. I was going to liquidate my assets, set up trusts, and disappear. Maybe move to some island where no one knew who I was or what I was worth. Just be James, whoever that was. What stopped you?" "You stopped me," James said. "You looked at me like I was a person, not a portfolio. You asked me for help, something no one had done in years because everyone assumed I had everything figured out. And when we danced, when you let me hold you, I remembered what it felt like to be human, to connect with someone. So no, I don't regret a single second. Not the photographers or the tabloids or the challenges, because all of it led to this, to us, to a life that matters." Sophia's eyes burned with unshed tears. "How do you always know exactly what to say?" "I don't," James admitted. "Most of the time I'm fumbling in the dark, hoping I don't screw this up. But with you, it's easier. You make me want to be honest, instead of perfect." Sophia reached up, cupping his face. "You're perfect to me." "I'm really not," James said wryly. "Remember when I tried to surprise you with breakfast in bed and set off the smoke alarm? Or when I accidentally donated your favorite sweater to charity? Or when I—" Okay. Sophia laughed. "You've made your point. You're beautifully imperfect. Just like me. Exactly like you," James agreed. "That's why this works. We're both a little broken, a little lost, figuring it out as we go. But we're doing it together." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights through their window. After a while, James said, "You know what I think about sometimes?" "What?" "That moment when you realized I wasn't an escort. The look on your face. Pure horror and mortification." Sophia groaned, burying her face against his chest. "Do we have to relive this?" "Always," James said cheerfully. "It's my favorite story. I will never, ever let you live that down." "You're terrible," Sophia muttered, but she was smiling. "I know," James said, "but you love me anyway." "I really do," Sophia said. "Against all odds and common sense, I really, really do." "Good," James said, kissing the top of her head. "Because I love you too. More than I thought possible. More than I knew I was capable of. You taught me that." They stayed there until the early hours of morning, talking and laughing and dreaming about the future. And when they finally went to bed, tangled together in sheets that had been washed so many times they were soft as clouds, Sophia thought about how far they'd come, from strangers to lovers to partners to a team that was changing lives. It wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined as a girl. It was better, because it was real. What did you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking on the end screen.